This is a wild fox, my bank-locked Ironman. Some will call a UIM, I'd call a mistake that I made back in 2021. After killing way too many hardcores and realizing that mode just wasn't for me, I instead closed the bank, got ready to hate myself, and started an ultimate Ironman instead. Starting off with prayer, this little guy here, I needed 480 of them, which took me 18 trips to use at the altar, which was a lot of running back and forth from the boneyard, and honestly, it took me about 2 weeks to do. Now, thanks to the sheer amount of yapping I've done over the years, let's get started with how things really began. October 31st was 43 prayer, which got me overheads, followed by heading straight to fishing trawler for the angler outfit for temporos. My first collection log on November 3rd, a highwayman mask from my first ever easy clue, and my first update that I ever posted at 503 total level. November 16th came along, and so did my first almost wipe by a wall beast of all things, and this wasn't even a month in. By November 18th, I'd hit 725 total level, and the account overall was honestly looking a little bit sporadic, because I didn't really know what I was going to do. December 23rd came with a little questing, and I passed 1000 total level thanks to the Grand Tree, which then set me up for an early Monkey Madness 1 run, which I completed on December 29th, and that pretty much concluded the year. By the end of the year, I got a basic POH setup, hit 1000 total level, realized I actually enjoyed the mode quite a lot compared to hardcore, which surprised me a fair bit, and coming from a main and endless dead hardcore Ironman, it felt like a nice change of pace. Going into 2022, the first big thing that happened was my first fighter torso on the account, which was a lot of fun with the clan at the time. And by January 8th, I'd already hit 1200 total, and things were coming along quite nicely. February, I decided to taint my account by unlocking Dragon Slayer tasks, by starting Dragon Slayer 1, grabbing the iconic orange shield from the Duke in Lumbridge, gearing up in whatever this was, and heading over to Karamja to behead Elvarg, all before running her head back to Edgeville and finishing with our good man Oziark. After this, I went and finally grabbed the Dragon Defender, and after that was another big upgrade, my first Slayer helm from Cave Horrors. As always, this was spooned, and I will say now, this is going to happen a lot in the account. 65 magic in April tipped me over 1400 total while training Slayer. With 26 days playtime now, things were adding up pretty quickly. Oh look, Game Jam 1, the dogs that we never got, that we really need to get, because I want dogs in the game. June came and went and consisted of stacking my first caskets, getting 100 collection logs, and the best things on my account so far being the mole slippers and the shoulder parrot. What was I even doing in July? Why do I have a necklace mold doing Slayer? Later in the month I decided to do my first bit of aerial fishing on the account, and most of it was done on mobile, and I snagged a super early golden tench, and then about 10 minutes later got another one too. August came and so did 1500 total level. Now, for one of the first silly decisions, I decided to drop everything and do revs for some reason, and after 501 KC, apparently decided that that was enough of that, and to go back to normal content again. Normal content being Temporos, and a really early Dragon Harpoon, which was nice. September rolled around and it was time to get some quality of life upgrades on the account going, starting with 65 farming and the farmer's outfit from Tithe Farm to unlock Hespori, and then 11 days later finally getting my first seed so I can get it planted and ready to go. A few weeks later, at 43 days playtime, I hit 1600 total level and the account was slowly chugging along, right into my first early Jad attempt that clearly went very well. Yeah, I think I came in with a bone crossbow and like no prayer for some reason. After this was a bit of a bigger update. At almost 50 days playtime now, I finally got my first set of Graceful completed. I really didn't like agility at this point. Speaking of 50 days playtime, a little account update. Sitting at 100 quest points, 200 collection logs, things had added up a little at least. At this point, the death bank, well, that was moving up slowly too. It was now almost 10 mil in value, which felt like a nice goal to aim for, even though most of the stuff would get used or dropped at some point. Now I started doing Slayer a lot more, and that meant tasks that weren't great, like gargoyles and dying to wyverns, with sharks in my inventory for some reason. Now going into September was a biggie. At 1400 hours playtime now, I finally completed Recipe for Disaster and unlocked the Barrow's gloves, which were honestly long overdue at this point. September 2nd, 2023, it was time to get some questing done, and it was time to return to Monkey. I grabbed my crystal bow and black d'hide, and well, Glove never stood a chance. Monkey Madness 2 was done, and that pushed me up to 1669 total level 2. With the stats looking a little more presentable now, it was time to have a little bit more fun. Then came the quest rush that was honestly long overdue too. Starting with the fun one, 400 small favors, Hand in Bert's Sandpit, and then the Legends quest for 120,000 Herblore XP, which was really nice at that point. Then came King's Ransom, and that meant unlocking Piety too. And after this, it was time for the Vampire quest line. Going in with a taste of hope, and then the big one, Transgressions of the Daddy. Now, it started off seemingly fine, great even. The first attempt at Vanstrom wasn't too bad at all, but wasn't enough, so I had to go back. And that's when I made the first big mistake of my account. That's when I had my first wipe. Now, everyone wipes eventually, it feels like, but this was just incredibly silly and completely avoidable. I died at the boss, and then I went back for my death bank and grabbed only my gear out, thinking it wouldn't be too bad and that, oh, he has no KO potential. Looking back, it wasn't too much stuff, but it was, at that point, everything I had. And going in, I think it was like 6 in the morning, thinking, oh, he doesn't have much KO potential, and then immediately dying. All that I was left with was the gear that I'd taken out, and everything else was gone. No more torso, no nothing. It was honestly quite a lot to lose at that point. I wasn't going to let that keep me down though, so the first thing I did was to go and resupply by killing Salarin the Twisted of all things. Now, why him? Well, he has a kind of unique drop table, and one of those things is for this sinister key that he would drop. The sinister key, and a little further back in his dungeon, you can open a chest, and in there, well, you guarantee these herbs, and albeit annoying, but they're all the potions that I needed. After the pots were made, we went in for the rematch, and oh boy did we win in a spectacular fashion with both of us going down at the same time. I didn't think I'd actually completed it. I thought I'd have to go back again, but apparently that counts, and honestly, at this point, we take those. With the wipe behind us, Sins of the Father had been completed. Now it was time to work on rebuilding and getting back on my feet again. So I went back and continued questing, knocking out some that were incredibly due, honestly. That being Ghost Ahoy, Morning Zen Part 1, and Part 2, which all took a little bit longer than expected, doing all my questing on mobile at the time. Oh, and then finally Spirit of the Elid too. All this questing was adding up, and it had pushed me over 1700 total, which was nice, but I still needed gear. So I went and quickly spooned a Warp Scepter from some very sad looking tortoises at 15 KC, and then went back to get the big one. My second torso, which honestly felt fantastic to have back after losing it. Thank God for actually enjoying Barbarian Assault. Then it was time to finally do some diaries that I was missing out on, to try and knock myself over 70 Herblore for Song of the Elves. With a bunch of them done, they actually tipped me over the edge for 70 farming and Herblore, and with that, I had all the requirements for Song of the Elves completed, and I was sitting at a healthy 1733 total with probably the most equally trained account that I've ever played to date. Now, you'd think, the requirements are done, it's Song of the Elves time, right? Surely he went and immediately did it and got straight into the gauntlet to get his Bowfer, and well, no, I went and finally got that fire cape that Jad had denied me of earlier on in the account. Just ignore that it took me a whopping 1 hour 44 minutes and that I tanked a hit from Jad. Yeah. With all the requirements done and honestly nothing else to stop me, I think it was time to get to prifddinas and to do Song of the Elves. Started off pretty well, speeding through it all. The defense part went pretty easily, and so did the fight with Esil. Esil. I don't know how half the elves' names are pronounced. But then came Seren, and I wasn't really ready for her. And with the first attempt ending in a death, I wasn't going to repeat the Sins of the Father again, so I re-geared, resupplied, and got myself ready again. Now, with the first attempt ending in a death, I wasn't going to wipe again, I wasn't going to do something silly, so I ended up having to go to Ardoin to pickpocket for GP to buy back my gear. So I re-geared, resupplied, got myself ready again, and with nothing but a phoenix necklace and nightshade left, she fell, and Song of the Elves was been completed. And I felt like I had reached a point on the UIM that I could actually be proud of, finishing Song of the Elves and entering prifddinas. Now, of course I immediately went into the gauntlet and got my first KC. Now, it wasn't perfect, but it was a start. So I went right into CG, full of hope, full of whimsy, which was quickly dashed by me having no idea what I was actually doing. Now, 4 days later, I managed to get my first corrupted gauntlet KC under my belt. And then 3 days after that, I was starting to feel, honestly, a lot more confident being in there. But then I was humbled pretty quickly by a bunch of mistakes that I would repeatedly make over and over again, and it kinda made me not want to do the content anymore. The biggest hurdle of getting here was getting Song of the Elves completed, and I wasn't gonna let the gauntlet beat me, and after a lot more deaths, I finally got my first armor seed at 120 KC. After quite a lot of weapon seeds, but that becomes pretty common to me. Now, the death bank at this point was starting to look a lot healthier coming out of the first wipe. I had more potions now, more gear, and more progress than before, and I'd even started my gauntlet sentence. But it felt like something was missing, like I'd overlooked something on the account that I'd forgotten about, and that was my POH. And going into November of 2023, it was time to start with some upgrades to make playing a lot more comfortable. After hitting 1800 total and 78 construction, it was time to upgrade the costume room finally, to get a stamina pool, a restoration pool, all things that would make playing just a lot nicer. Then came the first pet of the account, and I got this while sat in an airport, and the first one was the beaver, and as soon as I could, he was aptly named Dave. And why, I have no idea, but it honestly kinda just suited him. And back to a little Slayer now, where again, spooning items at 15 KC, I got a Drake's Claw, which meant I could make the Brimstone boots. Going into December, we had the end of the league for that year. Trailblazers was coming to an end, and not to go over too much, but we got the Dragon Cup, and that was that. Oh, my first Mimic kill too. Blessed with anything good? No, of course I wasn't. I was given 12 Manta Rays and a slap in the face from the most average of average elite clues that I'd ever seen. Time for 2024, starting this year with 86 days playtime and not too many supplies nor space for that matter, but it was yet again time for some quality of life upgrades. And they came with the Master Stash units for the Slayer Helm and Defender along with the Whip in Draenor, followed by my very own personal fairy rings in the POH. But these would become more useful later on. Back to a little Slayer, and what else but another spoon? This time at 171 KC, I got my first Trident of the Seas. February was a nice month. It started off with a gauntlet update. We had almost full crystal at this point, which felt incredibly nice to have finally. Oh, here's another spooned item, my first scepter from Pyramid of Plunder, which was very quickly used up for an occult altar in the POH, followed by another quest knocked out, this time Beneath Cursed Sands, which unlocked TOA for me. Then came March, starting with another spoon mind you. The enhanced weapon seed came in along with what I can only describe as quite a silly amount of normal weapon seeds. With this, I could finally send some raids, which I was immediately met with an arcane at 20 KC, which again, spooned. I know, but why stop now? But now for a bit more fun. Demonics, which gave me a whole load of ballista parts in 279 KC that I decided to go to Zolcano and spoon a tool seed instead at 146 KC, followed by a berserker ring at DKs, and then a dragon axe too. Now, the looting bag at this point was looking, let's be honest, a bit of a mess, but hey, going into April we decided to keep the spoon going, starting things off with a rock golem from stars at 3.2 million mining XP. And so, Sir Francis Kenneth Alabaster III joined the party. May started off pretty strong, with the first 99 on the account being ranged, and then a Master Wand hit the account too, followed by my first run at the Kraken boss, and of course, another pet at 61 KC. Who doesn't love a good spoon? Anyway, more demonics. How about a completed heavy ballista? We have one now, and you bet I'm keeping this thing, even if it's completely useless. Little did I know just how useless it was actually gonna be. Along came June, and so did an occult altar in the POH that I honestly kind of forgot that I could boost for now. But not only that, but 77 runecrafting too, finally unlocking Bloods. Now, 125 days playtime later, and it felt like time for a little update. The bag was pretty empty, the gear was looking, well, it was there. Anyway, moving on to July, we were finally blessed with the first Zenyte. First at 796 KC for the green log, followed by a second at 849. And with some quick spice boosting later, god I fucking hate it here, but it meant we finally had an anguish though. And, well, I also made a ring, which I would sooner regret than I expected. But then straight to Zulrah, to die, again. Shocker at this point, I know. But here's the bag update though, and the content is looking questionable to say the least. But what would make the bag better? How about 3 pairs of brimstone boots? Surely, right? These were quickly dropped over to a clanmate though, sadly, and with that it was already August and I needed a new melee weapon. Now, I had a few choices, but at this point the zombie axe had just released and I thought, why not? I'll go for one of those. And with that came a champion scroll, and then not so shortly after that, at 1726 KC, finally came the zombie axe. And with that, I had become the ultimate mid-game UIM, with my melee gear looking nice and tanky, my mage gear looking, albeit kinda questionable, but the trident nonetheless, and the range gear being full crystal in the bofa. September 2024, I decided to do some more questing, and that meant Rag and Bone Man 2, and Secrets of the North needed doing too, followed by a weird looking Hespori and Theatre of Blood entry KC for Night at the Theatre. And all that remained after that were the big 3, Desert Treasure 2, Dragon Slayer 2, and While Gothic Sleeps. At this point I just decided to lock in and just get them done, but with limited inventory space, I didn't know where to start. But that started with While Gothic Sleeps. Now, Sirach Magus blew absolute chunks and was indeed unstoppable, like he said. Well, until he wasn't. And then we killed the Guardian of the Stone of Jas too, which didn't feel too smart, but hey, While Gothic Sleep was complete, which meant it was time for Desert Treasure 2, and to enter the Stranglewood, and going right into Vardovis, he honestly fell over after a few attempts. After that, I was absolutely demolished by Cassandre and thought I'd wiped, but learned quickly that the pal was outside, so I went back in and rolled him too. Next was the big snake. This one really honestly did just fall over, and the big guy Duke, him too. Then was the big one, the Whisperer. I went into this not knowing fully what I was doing, apart from a few lines on the wiki explaining mechanics. The first attempt went surprisingly well, honestly, and even more surprisingly so, the second attempt, I was done. And with that, it was time to deal with the mysterious figure that had scared me earlier in the quest disguised as a sandwich lady random event in my POH, offering me a baguette, before quickly trying to stab me and barrage me. He was a surprisingly easy fight too, but if he thinks I'm a worthy foe, then I think the mystery is solved and he might just honestly kinda suck. The final fight was a lot more difficult than I was expecting, but after a few runs, we got it done, and with that, Desert Treasure 2 had been completed, and all that was left was to slay a few dragons, and up first was Vorkath. I went in with this gear, and it didn't work, so I ended up just using Crystal, and Vorkath fell over too. With that, I had my stupid little Beyblade finished, and so it was time to deathpile in Prif and gear for Galvek, which was a comfy one and done, finishing my final quest and getting me the quest point cape. But there was one last thing to do, the Lumbridge Elite Diary. I had the stats, I had my junk, I had the Lumbridge Elite Diary done and done, meaning no more lunar starves and free reign of the fairy rings finally. And with that, it was time to runecraft, and play the new Warhammer game, but mostly runecraft and mostly Guardians of the Rift, which, you guessed it, time for yet another incredibly spooned pet. At 1,799 searches, I pulled the Protector, who the wife quickly named Ford Probe. Now, after hitting 90 runecrafting and being able to now boost for Wraths, I decided it was time to get actually some supplies on the go. And being nearly 2,000 total, it was time to foot pedal Master Farmers. Starting off, I was planning to keep almost everything, and for now, I did. And that meant that when I was thieving going into October, I hit 93 thieving, and hit 2,000 total level 2, and the seeds were starting to add up nicely. Now closing in on 150 days playtime and passing 2,000 total, and it was beginning to become my main account to play at this point. It was actually closing in on passing my main. Now, pardon the crude writing, because this was an old mobile screenshot, but this is how the seeds looked at 98 thieving, and with nearly 1,000 runners, it was time to stop. November was fun. We hit 150 days playtime, and the account was slowly really starting to take shape, and it was becoming my new main account to play at this point. The looting bag was looking healthy from all the farming, and I was ready to call it an end to 2024. 2025 started off slow with not much happening in January at all, and February where I started my mole grind, and you betcha, another spoon pet, this time it's 487 KC. Now, I named him Mole Patent Boldness, but I went to get a screenshot of him, but it seems the plugin is actually not being updated right now, which was kinda sad to see. Hopefully it comes back at some point to see all of their names again, but anyway. The final mole loot looked pretty juicy after I'd finished and went right into brew making, and the bag finally looked like it had some form of order once more. It's so clean in fact that everything fit without a looting bag for the first time in a very long time, when February ended with me getting the great pool in the house. March came in and it was time for an agility skill of the week with the clan. Peaches absolutely hammered it and I came in a not so close second, but I did get all the equipment for Sepulchre done. Looking in my bag I thought, what do I need though, and decided it was time for 99 firemaking for a wintertodt boss of the week. 99 came all too fast, so I stayed a little bit longer and hit 20 mil XP, leaving with 1,882 permits to pull, and you guessed it, the Phoenix pet came in after 794 pulls. Shocker, I know. The final loot wasn't amazing, but a green log is a green log. Time for 2 more stash units though, finally building the Bofa and the Arclight stash, which are really overdue. Into April we did a couple things, hitting 175 days played and 100 moons KC that I did not enjoy doing one bit, but 93 crafting was quite a big one, as was 650 tormented demons. TOA learning happened briefly too, and 90 herblore was hit at mixology, which was a solid 4 out of 10 experience. Back to demonics for yet another spring for the log, but it could be worse. Oh look, worse, and then even worse again. But I kept them all, and I got a third Zenyte at 1,311 KC, which meant I could finally acquire a torture. And with that, the death bank grew a little more, sitting at almost 300 mil now. Skill of the week time again though, and time for Hunter. Getting the block list set up was a little iffy, but once done the XP rolled in. May started with 95, followed by 96, and of course, another pet, the baby Chin. And that took us up to 8 pets already. My skill of the week ended with me sitting in first place by a good margin, but not quite 99, so let's finish that. 98, and there goes 99. The loot from this was surprisingly nice though, and the breakdown made it even better, with 400,000 herblore XP, 700k cooking, and a big one being 1.2 million prayer XP, which tipped me over to 85 prayer. But back to runecrafting. 93 runecrafting, and finally the lantern. Then the mistake of buying extra boosts to store, didn't need them, dropped them, and then hit 95 for wraths finally without a boost. Finishing up with all but 1 set stored in the POH, and that's left is the pet transmog to go back for the green log in the future. Now the situation wasn't looking too bad, but it could be better. Mixology is awful, and it should feel bad. Say goodbye to some unwanted paste, because my god I hate that blaze. There goes 800 tormented demons, another zombie axe, and then my first ever Araxor kill down, which was a little slow, so I decided to go to Zulrah. Lo and behold, spoon a Serp helmet 63 KC, followed by my blowpipe at 110. I thought, why not, let's go back to TDs, and after hitting 900, the Synapse finally came in at 995 KC. June came and it was time for some TOA, and you know what that means, purples. This was out almost immediately for 3 mil though. But I did take that look, and I went right into Chambers and grabbed a quick cheeky dex to finally unlock Rigor. And with that I also snagged some fangs, and at 205 days playtime I finally mounted a Xerix amulet in my house. Oh, and a magic fang from Zulrah at 163 KC, because why not, we're spooning the boss at this point, let's just get everything. Now, I was dragged back into TOA by my buddy Mo, who then carried me through a very painful 15-minute warden fight that treated me to a light bearer at the end. God, it felt pretty bad for me getting the purple when he did all the work, but hey. Keeping the luck going to the end of the month, and the end of the month treated me to an imbued heart at 120 superiors for one hell of a spoon to end the month off with. Oh, and then the second claw for my burning claws too. July 2025, time for some Godwars and some more God Spoons for the 46kc spear, and then another at 77, and then again at 138. I swear it never gets old. But the bag was looking pretty messy again, but there have been some nice upgrades, albeit a little bit tight on space, but things were starting to look pretty good now. But hey, August came with an occult, and a big ol' rack spoon too, with the Fang at 275kc, which meant I could finally upgrade that torture to a Rancor. And the Rancor was honestly my first best in slot that I'd unlocked on the account to date. The only Zenyte left now was a Tormented bracelet, so I went and quickly fixed that. At 1465 demonics, I got the final one, and the death bank at the end of the month was looking pretty messy, but passing over the 500 mil limit felt like a big milestone to hit. October was pretty quiet, and not much really happened. I have a little bit of space in my inventory now, and the bag's pretty full, but there's plenty to work on. November came with a little decision making, and it was time to say goodbye to the Fang so I could nest the Trident again. And all this time I had 90-day countdown to deal after some wonky feelings about playing, but decided against it and to continue playing on as a UIM. And with that, it was time to go to Hydra, and it was time to learn Hydra for that matter too, and it went better than expected. Now, this is where I found this little guy being shamed, and decided to give him a little helmet, which felt very fitting for how I play this account, honestly. But there goes 100 Hydra KC already, with an eye already seen. Now the Hydra setup was looking pretty dire, so it was time to work on some choices to maybe get rid of a few things. The big ones being the Suffering, the Boppers, and the Serp, which had treated me oh so well, and with that I had breathing room again. At this point, it was time that I should have been prepping for sailing release, but god was I not feeling that yet, so it was time for some more Hydra, and then I got a leather at 215kc. Which amazing, but what about another one? 216kc too. Now for some real sailing prep though, and my god was I feeling light at this point. I'd processed everything, I'd got rid of everything I didn't need, I was ready, I had space, and I had the excitement to sail the seas too, so I filled up on anchors weighing 702 kilograms ready to go. And with sailing came the new quest, and we did it, and went through it pretty quickly honestly, defeating the Shellbane Griffin and quickly whipped that big bird. December rolled around and things were going well for me with sailing, but boy did the UIM community see some big wipes from this release, and some were just bad. 600 mil, 1.1 bill, 137 mil, 144 mil, and the biggest of the bunch being Cyber Sicko with the 4.7 bill wipe. This one hurt to read, but he sailed into the unsafe waters and couldn't find his death pile. An hour passed and it was just all gone. It's some sad wipes, but those aren't my journey, so back to business. I finished charting the sea and decided it was probably time to farm all the Ranar seeds, and here came the year in OSRS, and my god I played more than I expected I had done. Died a little less than I expected though too. The year was coming to an end though, and with it came 90 agility and a little update on the bag, and the stats sitting pretty comfy at this point. But that was it, time for 2026, and we started it with more agility. It was time to get some of these levels done. I tried mobile Sepulchre at some point, and the tile markers looked like this and were kinda wonky, so I decided against that. Between all the Sepulchre on PC and the Ardilapse on the iPad, I thought I'd been sneaking in a herb run or two here to cut through almost all of the Ranar seeds, so it was time to actually finally make a few prayer pots. Which did eke me over 92 herb lore, hitting the halfway point, but also hitting 2250 total level, which felt big. The island competition was coming to an end at this point, and I'd thrown my hat in the ring with this guy for a mid-game group boss to be a step up from Scurious, but sadly nothing came from him. I never really came up with a name for him, but I really liked the idea of having a new anchor or a new coral-based weapon. I also kinda liked the shark in his shell. The prayer pots were made, Sepulchre Floor 5 had been beaten, and I'd just passed 2000 Ardilapse too, then went to Brimhaven to mix it up for the recolor, and then back to Sepulchre again to finish the Black Graceful set too. Hitting 95, coming in with the iPad rooftops, and then the 43rd chest at Sepulchre came with the first ring, and then the final one before 99 I snagged a second one too. That leads us into this month, and it was time to finish off the rooftops. All these were done while relaxing on the couch with the wife, watching our shows, and it made the grind absolutely fly by, but with that, we're all up to date now. At this point, I'm all up to date, and I can honestly say I don't know where the last 6,000 hours went. I very much have not played very efficiently at all. but putting all this together was a lot of fun, going back over what ended up being over 160,000 messages in the UIM Discord alone, and a few others from DMs with friends, but that brings us to today, where right now I'm in the middle of the Hydra task, trying to get the claw so I can head back to Chambers again to hopefully spoon a bow at some point soon. But before then, it's time to participate in the yearly UIM bingo, so I better go do some things for my team before I forget to do that too. But anyways, if you watched to the end, I'd love to hear about some of your silly journeys and mistakes you've made along the way while learning while playing, and I'm always online, be it in the UIM Discord or my own, the Burrows, which there will be a link down in the description to join that too if you want to. That being said, I'm looking at streaming progress and starting what will be weekly update videos to keep myself progressing at a consistent rate for now, so if you want to watch the rest of my journey, feel free to subscribe too, and I'll see you in the next one.